Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is April the 14th. It's a day before tax day. Over the weekend, my mother celebrated her birthday. Happy birthday, Diane. Probably there in the chat. You guys didn't know. She's 1 year older. Tally that up. The talking points have come in, folks. The talking points have come in, and it is chaos that reigns in the Trump administration. Some of that may be true, but whenever I see an organized media effort where multiple people on multiple networks, including in print and on video, are saying the same thing, I see spin and I see an op. So I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like it when people go out there and try to sell us on something that is fake. So today we're going to be talking about the chaos, the confusion, the reversals, Trump's second term, according to the left. We're going to be talking about the attack of the oligarchy, which is inbound at all times. Of course, that's always really fun. It's almost like the talking points have been out there for 30 years. We'll do a Bernie Sanders rally. We're going to talk a little bit about the tariffs, which have kind of had some flip-flops. There's some global markets that are moving upwards as the tariffs are kind of being sussed out as what they need to be and what they ought to be. And it turns out that the New York Times, of all places, are, I think, making Donald Trump's point, which is quite interesting, that tariffs, particularly with China, are kind of a national security issue. This is something that anybody who's ever worked in the counterproliferation space, if you've ever worked in counterintelligence, you sort of know that this is something that has been a real long festering problem. The Chinese, with intellectual property concerns and the fact that they have access to all these servers, the Chinese do not care about playing fairly, and it's about time. So, some short-term discomfort is fairly reasonable. Let's see what else we got on there. We're also going to be talking about Blue Origins, which is to say Jeff Bezos' rocket company, where a number of relatively attractive females are going to ride the most penis-shaped thing into the atmosphere. And apparently, that is groundbreaking work. Our chat already got started with that and referred to them as bimbos in space. That's not very nice. Call it DEI in space. I don't know. A team of very capable men will be making sure that they can safely fly around in the enormous white phallic-shaped object. So that's where we're going to go today. Before we get launched into all of that, I would really encourage you guys to make sure that you are liking our channel wherever you are. If you're over on Rumble, it's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin and the current video there. Also check out our Sunday sit down. Same thing for the folks over on YouTube. YouTube, by the way, is way better at hitting the like button. We have a smaller audience and a more powerful thumbs up crew over there. So thanks for all that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel wherever you're at. If you want to support us directly, you can go to Locals, which is going to be KyleSeraphin.com, and that is our Locals channel where we get to interact. You guys get the stuff a little bit early, and Spotify is the easiest place to get access to the replay. There's no pop-up ads if you don't like that sort of thing. KyleSeraphinShow.com. Check that out. Let's quick and talk about my friends over at Patriot Coolers, and then we're going to launch into like what is going to be a pretty jam-packed full stuff. That's the way these weekend shows. I lost track of time sitting here stuffing the bag full. As my buddy Garrett O'Boyle says, we try to put like 8 or 9 pounds into a 5-pound bag, or maybe he says 12 pounds into a 10-pound bag, but we're going to cram it in. Another thing you can do is you can actually cram your cold goods into a Patriot Cooler, especially when you go grocery shopping. That's the way it works here in the Seraphin household. Mama Seraphin went out shopping the other day. As usual, she's got a cooler in the back of the minivan. They make these weird little wells if you use all the seats in your minivan like we do, and you have this space, and you're like, well, I can throw all my stuff in there, but if you live in somewhere like Texas, if you live in Florida, if you live in Mississippi, if you live anywhere in the South, probably up to Tennessee and Kentucky, if you live in places where it gets really hot, all of your frozen goods are useless by the time you get home, even on a short trip, because your car's been sitting there baking. It's nice to have something like a Patriot Cooler in the back there. They're like a competition to Yeti, I would say, but they are better looking. They're a superior product. We have stopped using the Yeti that we got for our marital gift. We got this like wedding gift that was a Yeti, and I haven't used it since I got the Patriot Cooler. We used the 50 quart It's awesome. It's really, really a good product. You can save 10% on it by using my name, KYLE. You can also always get one of their tumblers, something like this. This is the OD Green. This is the Gen 2. They're on to the Gen 3 now, better lids. Check them out, patriotcoolers.com, promo code KYLE. Really appreciate their sponsorship, and we appreciate you guys looking into it when you're in the market. Let's go ahead and dive in. Indeed, indeed. Okay, so we're going to start with chaos. That's the right place to start. So here it is. There's Donald Trump looking very serious with a slightly skewed tie. I don't know what's going on. It must have gotten caught under the jacket. Chaos, confusion, and the reversals. The story of Trump's second term so far. Now, there are two things that can happen at once. Number one, I would really like some things to be moving a lot more quickly, like reform of our federal justice system would be a big deal. Seeing people booted instead of seeing people promoted. I think we spent a lot of time on that last week. I'm not done with it. We've got a little bit more on there. In fact, Judicial Watch weighed in on some of the issues going on with the FBI, and I like to see Tom Fitton kind of popping in there. I don't know Tom personally. We've had a couple of conversations in some of these early Twitter spaces while they were doing the Twitter files, and I do remember Tom saying one thing that stuck with me. It's something that I kind of reflected on for a while. He said, the work that you do today and the exposing of the FBI right now is far more important than anything you could have ever done when you were actually working for the Bureau. Now, Tom doesn't know what I did in the FBI, but he's absolutely correct because the stuff I did was, for the most part, local. Or I was seeing that the FBI wasn't doing what we said we were doing. In other words, they were telling you that they were solving the terrorism problems out there. In reality, they were either setting them up or they were just glossing over and doing busy work. So none of that was particularly helpful. And so exposing people to information about what goes on inside the Bureau, for better or for worse. Today I had to do a little defense of the FBI. I'm not real crazy about what they're doing, but I saw that Wendy Patterson, who's over on X, and did a fairly long thread report about an MS-13 gang member, and she said the guy doesn't have a criminal record. Well, like, just for the record, folks, that's just how it works. You don't have a criminal record until you do have a criminal record. So we're pretty short into the Trump term as of yet, and I'm aware of that. That's why this story is funny to me. It's the Trump term so far. We're in April. It started in January. We're less than one quarter in. We're coming up on the first, let's say, 90 days. There are things that could be done faster, but to call it chaos, confusion, and so on, he's moved quickly on his far-reaching agenda, but the administration has frequently changed both its messaging and its course. I actually think that's part of the plan. I don't think that's part of the plan when it comes to what's going on in DOJ. I think they're actually getting snowed a little bit. There's a funny story that actually came out of, I think, MSNBC. We might cover it if we have enough time, saying that Pam Bondi is running the DOJ with an iron fist. None of us really believe that. So they're upset about Pam Bondi because she's getting rid of some, veteran prosecutors, simply getting rid of people who are on probation. But the idea that the Trump administration has been changing messaging, I think that actually is the laser pointer. And I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just like a happy accident. It's pretty good. It's great to see the left kind of like run rampant all over itself, trying to figure out what's the answer. I'll show you what they think the answer is. You guys are going to be shocked to find out in just a second that MSNBC has a solution, and it is the final solution, as usual, for all things Donald Trump. It said here, as he prepared to take office for the second time, he made it clear that his economic team was going to put tariffs that need to be imposed quickly. They've done that. Good for them. One candidate in a top position for the job suggested to him during the transition, it might be a better idea to move slowly and more deliberately. That person didn't get the job. Trump is not very sympathetic. He doesn't want to do a speed of government, which is why we're frustrated. By the way, 30 days is enough time to do a lot of the things that were sussed out that you could do in the FBI. So you're sitting here and realizing that Donald Trump's in a hurry, and they're upset about it. So what do you say when someone's in a hurry? What is the number one message you might press out into the world when somebody is moving in a hurried manner? Would you say that it is chaos, that it's causing confusion, and that they are not getting everything right on the first time? It turns out, it seems like that's the messaging and the talking point that has gone out. And Western Lensman, L-E-N-S men, over on X, put together a fantastic compilation here. I love these side of these Grabian style, Newsbusters style clips where you can hear all the people using the same word. And you think, it's almost like they got those talking points issued to them. I would like to get on that email thread. I don't know how to do it, but I would very much like that. Here's a taste of the chaos talking point in visual media.
We begin this hour with the chaos.
The average American sees chaos. The American people see chaos.
It's total chaos.
You brought chaos.
It's just complete chaos.
Unleashed an economic chaos.
They unleash chaos.
They are creating chaos.
This chaos.
Oh, there's too much chaos.
Total chaos.
That amidst the chaos,
We're going to see chaos.
After seeing all the chaos,
the chaos he has unleashed on America.
Continue to see the chaos.
Economic chaos.
A lot more chaos.
Trump's chaos.
This is chaos with such chaos.
The chaos, because of this chaos. Chaos.
All of this chaos.
Uncertainty and chaos.
Given all that chaos.
When it's chaos.
all the chaos. Chaos and confusion grow.
It's more chaos, dysfunction.
the chaos is the purpose. The chaos is the goal.
It's chaos.
Oh my goodness. How did they all come up with that word at the same time? There are the possibilities that a couple of people might land on the same idea at the same time. I've had somebody that's been pelting me with comments saying, you can't say suicidal empathy without getting credit to the original creator. Well, what else would you call it? I mean, there's only so many ways you could describe this sort of fatal instinct to have a feminine compassion. Suicidal empathy makes sense to me. And I promise you, I've never read whatever his name is, Gad Sad. I think that's who they claimed it came from. I don't know who wrote it. Maybe I read it somewhere else who took it from him, or maybe I just, independently did. But you can't find all of these politicians who don't seem to have a single original thought. They don't all come up with the idea of referring to it as chaos at the same time. Somebody messaged this out. And I guarantee, if you guys don't know how this works out, because you're seeing both media personalities and you're seeing politicians do it at the same time, somebody did a poll. And they do these sort of like poll tests where they find out, hey, what hits with you? What word resonates with you? What word makes you feel the most anxious? And so they just, poll tested the word chaos, and that's how it comes out. Can I prove that? No. Does that sort of indicate, because you just had that diversity of people saying the same word? Likely. Probably. So there's got to be a solution. We got to figure out how are we going to fix Trump. That's what the lefties want to do. And here's what they got. Democrats, you guys are going to be by the way, you're flabbergasted. I see this. Some Democrats in Congress are going to start talking about impeachment, and they are right. It's got to be MSNBC if you're going to go straight to impeachment when you don't have the numbers. Let's talk about it. It's time to stop beating around the bush. Donald Trump must be impeached and removed from office. Why? Because chaos, because January 20th created a constitutional crisis. I don't know why I think these people are so funny. How do they, what are they doing? They started doing this before it even got started, by the way, folks. They were pushing this at the State of the Union. This is not new. This is the only solution they have. They've already done this twice and failed. They're getting addicted to losing. Since January 20th, many, by the way, are all the same people. This is written by a guy named Andy Craig. He's a fellow at the Institute for Humane Studies. I'm sure that is a very right-wing group. They're talking about the wanton lawlessness of Donald Trump, trying to make himself a king in all but name. Is that what he's doing? That's interesting. Okay. But by and large, elected Democrats have bent over backwards to avoid using a certain word. They're using chaos, but not impeachment. Their alarm bells are ringing hollow when the unavoidable implications are left unstated. It's time to stop beating around the bush. We must remove him from office. No idea how that's going to work. In the Intel community, we have an expression when someone says something utterly ridiculous and you have to report the words. So let's say somebody is let's say that they're being interviewed. And so they'll come out there and they'll be like, yes. And that's when I realized that the moon was made completely of Gouda cheese. And you'd say, what was that again? And they'd be like, yes, the moon was made of cheese. Listen, when I was driving a Ford F-150, and then they move right on, and you just go, the guy randomly said the moon was made of cheese. That's a discrediting moment, but you don't want to discredit them by saying, the writer knew this to be false. So what you do is you just put in parentheses NFI. NFI stands for no further information. You'll see me do this sometimes on social media as well. You guys can play with this. NFI means I can't validate it. I have no supporting information. There is no further information. This is an unvalidated claim. So somebody will say something. It'll be completely, utterly absurd. Like, we must do something. He must be impeached and removed from office. NFI. No idea how. We're just saying things. At this point, they're just sort of yelling into the wind. They're yelling into the clouds, I suppose. And NFI is my favorite sort of like little snarky, sarcastic. It's an internal Intel code. And I don't know that everybody used it that way, but it was my favorite way to unvalidate or invalidate somebody's nonsensical expressions. So there you have it. That's a thing. And what is the chaos? What's the reason he needs to be removed? I don't know. Like maybe the global stock markets are all over the place because we're doing a tariff thing. Here's the story coming from CBS. No, this is from ABC. The president suggested over the weekend that there would be a temporary reprieve over some things. The stock market is up amid tariff exemptions for electronics. So Trump actually stated this. Actually, Stephen Miller stated this on behalf of Donald Trump a few times. One of the things they stated was like, okay, here's the deal. We are not going to tariff things that we don't make in surplus in the United States. You go and you protect U.S. industries by saying people who want to compete head to head with U.S. industries, people who want to have, let's say, a factory in China. It's not going to be in Beijing, but that was the example they used, versus a factory that is making the same thing in Cleveland or Cincinnati, Ohio. You tariff the foreign company because they shouldn't have better access, cheaper access than an American company. So you punch a price surplus on there, you punch this incoming tax, and then it makes it more expensive. And so then the American consumer goes, well, the prices, all things being equal, I'm going to choose the American over the other. That's just how you do it. So if you're going to have to exempt a couple of things, yeah, maybe you would. But the funny thing about all of that is, one, how does it land with the American people? And the answer is it's kind of mixed. And then the second thing is there actually a good excuse for why we should have some short-term pain on this? CBS News, this is where I was thinking it was CBS, it's brought this broader question about whether or not it's going to fix problems, whether these problems are actually out there. Let me run through a couple of the numbers. What you're seeing on the screen, if you happen to be watching, is a CBS News YouGov poll. That's one of the ones they work with. The plus or minus error on this, the margin of error is 2.4 percentage points. So it's fairly definitive that this is where it lives. And you're basically seeing just shy of half of people think that long term, the new tariffs are going to hurt the U.S. economy, about almost 50%, somewhere between 40 and 50. Then you see how many people think it'll make it better. It's about a third of people. And some people think it'll do nothing, like a quarter of people as well. So it's not fantastically leaned towards folks, but at the same time, you have to realize that like half the people in this country are predisposed to thinking Donald Trump is literally Hitler. And half of them are hearing that everything is chaos. So if you were to just discount that part, I'm sure it's probably a little bit more mixed on people that are likely to agree with the president to begin with. They all realize that it's going to increase prices in the short term. 50% of people, again, that 48%, this is not on the screen, but this is something I'm reading off screen. 48% of people think that it'll increase prices long term. You're not going to make half this country happy. They've already got their minds made up and they're not really willing to negotiate at this point. So then it's kind of split between the folks that are at least giving it a fair shake. The funny thing is, the New York Times actually makes their point for them. And additionally, 49% of people think that it's going to actually add some manufacturing jobs. And then your other 50%, that kind of like left wing side, 25% says it'll make the U.S. lose jobs. That's a weird thing. And 25% say that it won't change anything. Again, this country is so divided and so like flipped down the middle that you're not going to get it. But let me make the broader point that the New York Times, I think on accident, because it is the New York Times, ends up pushing the exact correct issues. There are two back-to-back stories that I found. I archived them. I'll put them over on KyleSeraphin.com. We're not doing an individual post over there. Anybody can look at it. If you guys watch the stream on Locals, which I don't know why you would, you might as well come over to Rumble and be part of the chat. But if you're watching it over on Locals, underneath it, you'll find that there's the show of the day, and the first comment is always going to be all of the articles that we use. I might even actually start copying that comment over onto Rumble as well, in case anybody wants to click through it. I don't think it's a bad thing if there's enough characters there. So number one, the first article, why Europe fears a flood of cheap goods from China. Should we just digest that for a second? Why would Europe fear a cheap good flood? Because the Chinese have been playing unfairly and they're willing to manipulate currency. They're willing to manipulate the flow of goods, and that they can basically step up a manufacturing facility that's paying slave labor to dump in and crush local business. Isn't that the exact problem that the United States is facing? A flood of cheap Chinese goods is pricing out the possibility of even making it in the United States. President Trump's tariffs on China could lead to a hazardous scenario for European countries, the dumping of artificially cheap products that would undermine local industries. It's written by a man named Michael Shear and a woman named Gianna Semiliak. I don't know. I probably butchered that name. One in London, one in Brussels. Internationally based people are very worried about what goes on in Europe. China, for years, has presented an economic challenge to Europe, and now it becomes an economic disaster as long as Donald Trump puts pressure on them. It produces a vast array of artificially cheap goods, heavily subsidized electric vehicles, consumer electronics, and toys, and commercial-grade steel, and a bunch more. But much of that trade was destined for the voracious appetite of the American marketplace. Isn't that actually what we're trying to fix? Isn't that exactly what we're saying is the issue? Many of those cheap goods facing an extraordinary wall of tariffs thanks to Donald Trump are going to be dumped into the European market. It's literally the issue that if they can come in and undermine your economy, that they can come in and blast through and give you the cheapest thing, they can cut everybody else and you're going to basically eliminate competition at some point in time. This is if you were going to broaden this experience, you can actually broaden it by looking at Main Street versus like Walmart, right? The Main Street mom and pop shops. Why did they all go away? Why do people think that they went away? Because the access, because the buying power that existed for a larger corporation, the Walmarts, the Targets, the big box stores, just smashed them out. And they were close enough and convenient enough that people were willing to go out there and get it done. We're literally seeing the answer right there. This is something that has been brewing my entire lifetime. People have been complaining since probably the 70s, late 70s, moving into the 80s, that the big box stores, that these massive sort of, corporations are destroying local business. And then it becomes a thing where you start looking and you say, well, not only are they destroying the local businesses, this pipeline from China into the American household, it's also destroying American products. Fun little moment. My mother used to make, she used to sew, and she would make costumes for us when we were kids. How many of you have had a homemade costume that you can remember? If you're my age or older, if you're in your 40s, 50s, and then onward 60s, 70s, you probably remember that Halloween costumes. There wasn't like some big garbage spirit warehouse where you could go buy all this Chinese crap. Somebody made it for you. They made you a witch costume. Maybe you found the hat, but they made the dress, right? We had superhero costumes that my mother made. And one of the parts of this was a pair of like underoos, they were like red waistband, elastic waistband with the red seam and a white undies. And so they were just regular underwear, but like every other, for some reason, all the superheroes used to wear underwear, right? They'd wear they'd wear tights and then underwear and then a cape. I don't know why. That's the 80s for you guys. That's what I grew up in. That's the 70s. That's all the comic book heroes. For some reason, they all wore underwear that was kind of like a modern cod piece. We still have some of those costumes that my mom made back in the early 80s for me and my brothers. And when you look at them, it's crazy because the underwear from Fruit of the Loom, large corporation, were made in America, and that was the way that things were done. So in my lifetime, we've gone from making all of the American products. We made all of our own garments. Your t-shirts were made in America. Your undies were made in America. Your socks were made in America. Now you have to pay a premium for that. Well, you don't really have to pay a premium. What you're doing is you're paying the price of the good that it would cost to make in America. If you wanted to buy American, that's like a big deal. The alternative is you get something that is artificially cheap, right? You buy this Chinese garbage that tries to undermine our economy. It's actually fairly shocking. And then the second story, which I don't want to touch, I don't want to leave it off. The Chinese are halting critical exports as our trade war intensifies. There's an entire story about how the government in Beijing has suspended the export of rare earth minerals and magnets, things that are necessary for the aerospace industry. We're going to be talking about the bimbos and space games, so we'll talk about that. Semiconductors, all of the cars that are out there in the world. There is a huge piece of our economy, even if it's American stuff or like it's American made. How many of you have seen this? I bought DeWalt tools before. I'm sure you have as well. It says made in America with internationally sourced products and parts, right? So it might be assembled here, but some of the constituent elements are made overseas, usually in China or Vietnam. It used to be Taiwan, right? Made in Taiwan is actually like a luxury stuff now. How about Japan? Makes really nice stuff. We don't hate that nearly as much, but that was a big deal in the 80s. We're talking about the fact that this whole made in USA game, we are exposed dramatically. And the New York Times is proving this. If they can stop things in the aerospace industry and your vehicles and your semiconductors, your technology fields, what you've done is you've just shown what Donald Trump said in the first place, that this is a national security issue. And then you wonder why he's talking about places like Greenland, where there's mining for these types of things. There's only so many places in the world where you can find rare earth metals and rare earth minerals and the things that they go mining for in Africa and so on and so forth, cobalt and all this kind of thing, bauxite. And, when people are going out there, this is why theoretically we could have been involved in Afghanistan. It's like there's a lot of things that are just not in the United States. A lot of stuff in the United States, we don't want to go through those ugly processes either. That's a bigger piece. The United States doesn't want to have that. You want to see strip mining? How many people are, there's all these EPA requirements that you can't hurt Mother Gaia. The climate pagans are all upset, but they're totally okay with it as long as you do it in some like crappy third world, what did Trump call them? Shithole countries? As long as you do it there. If you do it in Chinese, they don't care. If you do it in Africa, they don't care. You can't do it here. You have to outsource your garbage. It's almost like these people don't actually have real principles. But there's something quite dramatic about watching our friends over at the New York Times, who I would imagine are probably on the impeachment train. They're probably in the chaos. I didn't see an article up in the front couple pages saying anything about chaos, but I'm sure they've got these same talking points, and they're indicating that. The chaos is just that it's actually necessary, because God forbid the United States find itself in another, global pandemic. Let's say there actually is a real threat of something that can be cured with some real simple stuff, something that could be made here, but we don't have the manufacturing facilities to do it. Antibiotics was something that was highlighted by my friend Eric Blanchford the other day. What? Yeah. We can't make our own antibiotics? We can't, that becomes a serious problem for our troops, for our national security apparatus, for the American public at large. If you can't go to work because we don't have them and China decides they're not going to send in cheap antibiotics anymore, we need to have some of these things onshored. And I think Trump has actually pointed this stuff out. He's exposed it. The best and funniest take is what they want to do about what he's doing there. And I'll get that in just 1 second. I think you guys will also this is like a comedy of errors going back and forth. Before we get there, let's talk about something that is an American product. At least it's made in an American company. International beans, I have to imagine. It's my friends over at Blackout Coffee. Folks, we've been telling you about Blackout Coffee for a few months now. I just ran out. I actually have an emergency bag over my head, but I'm not willing to break it open. blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. We've been telling you about them for a few months. If you haven't tried them yet, we're going to break it down for you. It's not just a coffee company. They're an American brand. They got hard work and grit and American values built right into it. 6 years ago, these guys started it in their home garage. Like many of you may have started a business. Mine started in a trailer. Today, they've got 64,000 square feet of warehouse space. They're roasting all the beans in-house. They're packing all the orders themselves with American employees. They've got 30 folks there doing the job. No corporate nonsense, just damn good coffee, and it's made by people who give a damn. Over the weekend, I had to go out there and punch it out, and I don't mess around. I bought 2 of their 5-pound bags, so those are inbound, and I'll let you guys know when they come in. You'll see me heft them over here. I'll probably do some curls on screen. Blackout Coffee is not just about making a great cup of coffee. They're about supporting the American dream. This is something we're kind of talking about right now, aren't we? They built a company the right way with hard work and real values and coffee that actually gets you moving, so you can make the switch. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. It's 20% off your first order. I used my own promo code on this stuff. I use my own money on the things that I advertise to you guys. Support real coffee, and you can drink Blackout Coffee. Again, it's blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Don't drink weak coffee. We'll start it off correct. I am going with my Costco brand right now, which is maybe suboptimal. So be it. Here we go. You ready? Cory Booker. He's going to save us. He's got this done. Cory Booker, who just did a 25-hour marathon clown fest, talking and stopping nothing, just doing performances. A man who said this is our Spartacus moment because he's an actor, right? The guy who showed up in the Ken Jeep wearing all pink. He thinks that Congress should now hold hearings on whether or not there was insider trading involved in Donald Trump's tariff situation. As if somebody could not figure out that when you put on a global tariff, the market is going to tank the minute that it actually happens. There was fear. If you guys look at the market graphs, I just look at the mutual funds that I'm in. I'm not in a ton of stock market stuff. But I looked at it, and when they announced, hey, we're actually going to do this, and we've got a date, and this is our Liberation Day. It's got to be in the beginning of April, blah, 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 right? You just watch, and the market just slowly goes, a couple of spikes up. Oh, maybe they won't do it. Oh, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. And it goes down, and then they actually implement it. The tariffs are triggered, and then bam, we had a drop. A couple of good drops. You didn't know when to buy in? If you were going to buy something, you didn't know then. And then they came back and then they said a couple things like, hey, we're going to adjust our policy because all we wanted was to leverage people coming to the table. That's the entire purpose of what we're doing here. This is not crazy. We just want to get people on board. And then, then you just have these folks going like, oh, we need to do insider trading. How about investigations into insider trading? But we just include not just the tariffs. How about all insider trading in Congress? Would you be into that, Mr. Cory Booker? Because when you guys think about insider trading, every single one of you pictured Nancy Pelosi worth $120 million. I've seen multiple clips out there talking about it in the last couple of days. People are laughing. By all means, nobody on the right is going to be mad about you doing insider trading investigations. We want transparency. We want people to go to jail. We want scumbags to be stopped from being scumbags. And I'm sure there's some Republicans that would get swept up in that. I'm fine with that. You shouldn't be able to go out there and trade on this stuff. I've seen billionaires talk about how it's impossible, that it would take 3,000 years of the salary to be able to make the kind of money that these people have. So do it. This is not a threat. This is like, don't threaten me with a good time, Cory Booker. I think we get behind it. I think we get behind this. CNN having little meltdowns. This is one of the funnier panels. This is a gal named Batya Ungar-Sargon, and she goes out. She's an author, and she wrote some stuff. They've been bringing her on to talk about tariffs because this is her thing. She's been basically kind of like focusing in on what is the 70s, 80s, 90s progression towards something terrible, which is where we sit today when it comes to like sort of really cheap goods that we're all addicted to, but how much everything costs. And she's trying to explain it to her. She's got like basically dumbfounded. All these people on CNN are absolutely breathless with waiting to try to take her down, but they don't seem to have any real answers to it. So here she is. She's kind of doing a little monologue. I think it makes sense. Yeah, it's gonna be tumultuous. This is the chaos, I suppose.
Here's the way I think they're thinking about it. It feels like the direction they're heading in is that what Trump basically wants is for our allies to consume a lot more of our products and for China to produce a lot less of what we consume. And so I think what he's going for is a kind of soft global embargo on China. And the way that he went about doing that is he basically picked up a baseball bat and said to the entire global elites, that's a really nice stock market you've got. It would be a shame if anything happened to it. And the reason that I think that was effective is, Lutnick is saying that they could never have gotten such good deals if that pressure that you're actually describing wasn't there. But I think that was more designed for a domestic audience. And the reason that I think that is this. I've been thinking a lot about the 10 million Americans who lost their homes in the 2008 financial crisis and how President Obama's first act in office was to give $700 billion to the banks that caused it, including $30 billion in bonuses to the crooks who organized it. And I'm thinking about how those very Americans saw a president pick Wall Street over Main Street, and what they saw this whole week was a president willing to go out there and fight for the forgotten men and women of this heartland and take on the entire international global order.
Okay. And then the chaos just absolutely erupts because they're just like, how could this be? We can't handle this. We can't talk. This is the same people that went out there and told you that Donald Trump was an agent of Russia. Do you remember that? Like, this is where the impeachment started. So in order to stop whatever he's doing, the constitutional crisis, no further information, they were the same people that were telling you that there was Russian interference, that he's selling out to Russia. They've kind of moved on from that. Now he's just incompetent. Now he's just dangerous. And now he's just scaring all their friends. Why do they have to breathlessly support China, which has unbelievable amounts of human rights violations, is a serious threat to our national security on so many different levels, and you can't get these people. All they want to do is try to punch Trump. Again, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. This is going back to the old days when like BuzzFeed was talking about the PP tape.
You're a member of Judiciary. Do you believe the president right now has been an agent of the Russians?
Yes, I think there's more evidence than he is. Yes, and I think all the arrows point in that direction, and I haven't seen a single piece of evidence that he's not.
An agent like in the 1940s where we had people who are Reds, to use an old term, like that. In other words, working for a foreign power.
He's working on behalf of the Russians, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my God, he's working on behalf of the Russians and he's sanctioning the Chinese and he's starting trade wars. They just don't make any sense. Look, it's really, really simple. Kevin O'Leary, which we've played on here, seems to be a voice of sanity on a regular basis. This is what it's all about. We talked about a few things. We talked about critical defense manufacturing, things that can fall under what are called dual use. That's going to be a lot of your electronics. That's going to be some of your materials, right? Then you're going to talk about things that America should have access to, national security issues, just because the supply line itself is not protected. We saw this during COVID when suddenly we were just out of things. You know, we didn't actually run out of toilet paper. We actually make a lot of that here. But a lot of the critical things that you use every single day probably should be onshored. He's talking about another thing that's called IP. We played a clip last week talking about intellectual property. That is to say, I have a brilliant idea because I am well-nourished and I live in America and I have the ability to live in, and be educated properly with all kinds of different access to technologies. And I have an internet that is not censored the same way that the Chinese are. So I come up with this brilliant idea. I'm going to make a laser mapped floor mat that Americans can put in their very nice, now very, very expensive cars. All of our cars are so expensive. And then the Chinese go, well, thanks for doing all the work. We really appreciate that. That was awesome. Thanks for making it in our manufacturing facilities. Awesome. We'll make them too. We're just going to sell them for cheaper because your IP is not recognized. Your patents are not recognized here. You cannot sue because we don't actually care. And he explained it in front of a nice little hearing here. This is over, I think, in the Senate. He's like, they just run the factory, and that's why all these things look the same. They can access your exact customer with an identical product without ever having to pay for the development.
The whole idea of today's conversation was just to get to a reciprocal playing field, a even playing field.
So, Mr. O'Leary, what if there was a company called WeatherTech? You know, and they produce really nice mats for their car.
I have them in my F-150.
And they woke up one day and they looked on Alibaba and they saw that their products were being sold on Alibaba. And they looked at their shipping, and they never had done any business with Alibaba. And they looked just like the mats that they produced in Illinois, and they even had their name on it, right? What could they do to stop this theft of their product? And they got nothing for it. What would be their recourse right now?
There is nothing they can do. You have just told the story of 1 million small businesses in America over the last 20 years. They innovate, they create, they're entrepreneurs, they prove their product in the American consumer market at around 5 million in sales. They're knocked off. By whom? China. Very often, the same plants that ran the molds under a relationship they had with the company. A lot of companies went to China 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and put their molds there. And during the day, the company would run the WeatherTech mat, in this example, here theoretically. And then at night, they'd run the knockoff mat.
It's the exact same factory. They just changed the label. They put the exact same product out there, and they just screw you. Yeah, it's a real thing. And you guys all know this because you've all bought knockoffs. And you're like, damn, this looks exactly like the real thing. It is the real thing. They just didn't pay for the development end of it. Now, in the short term, that's really helpful to all of us. No question. We all like to get a cheaper product. Everybody wants a deal. You want a deal. I want a deal. I don't want to pay more if I don't have to. But the cost is that it completely screws over the American person who made it. And do the political lefties care about that? No, not even a little bit. They pretend to be like fans of the working man. They pretend to be people who are going to go out there and defend, I don't know, like unions, right? But when you ruin manufacturing jobs, and the same gal that we had on earlier that was with the CNN clip, she's talked about it. Like, it used to be that a man could go and work with a high school diploma and support a family of multiple kids. Declining birth rates is part of this myth that it's like too expensive to have kids, right? That's why you got to put mom in the workplace too. A lot of this stuff can be traced back to a very simple thing. They opened up China and the Chinese said, thank you for the opportunity. We have a 50 to a 100-year plan to destroy you. And now you got some guy standing in it. So when the leftist media get a chance to ask questions of Donald Trump, do they go out there and understand the threat or the problem? Or do they worry about their buddies in Hollywood of all things? This is like maybe one of the funnier clips from, like, this is why Donald Trump is fun to watch. In the 2.0, I feel like he's more comfortable. He used to be much more adversarial, right? He would like engage people, and he was pissed in the first one, probably because he was getting investigated by the FBI that was never controlled by his administration. This is much funnier to watch. I do get a kick out of this. And everybody can't help but laugh because they're asking, hey, what happens if the Chinese don't allow American companies to show films like Snow White over in Chinese? He's like, yeah, I think we got bigger problems. It's pretty classic.
China retaliated today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction to them now targeting cultural exports from the United States?
I think I've heard of worse things.
I mean, he's right. Is that the worst thing that's going to happen? They're not going to show our films over there. And he's like, bah. China's a big market, you know, but what do too? They also bootleg and they don't care about intellectual property and a bunch of other things. So like, how about you've got rare earth minerals and defense capabilities, and then you've got like the movies in Hollywood are not being shown at the right rate. Like, who freaking screw you? That's too funny. Okay. So all of that sets me up for what is, you know, why do I think this is amusing? Mostly because they're very upset about billionaires who do understand this problem. O'Leary, billionaire, from what I understand. Elon Musk, billionaire, working in the space. They're hitting back and saying these guys are a real problem. We can't have people that understand how businesses and global supply chains, and can't have people that have actually created companies and American wealth and capabilities. We can't have those people consulting in the government. We need people that are like interested in, like, I don't know, currency manipulation. People that are like playing the markets like a demon in the background that are screwing over. There was a story that I remember the first time I ever heard of George Soros. And I don't remember if it was the New York Times or if it was maybe like the Financial Times. It was an international newspaper that was well known. And it said, George Soros, the man who broke the Bank of England. I remember reading that article when it happened. And he was a villain, an absolute villain for shorting the British pound and basically running off with a huge amount of money. Never did anything, didn't create anything, didn't have a product that people would be voluntarily interested in buying. I'm not a big fan of Teslas in general, although I might have one as a bait car now because it seems fun. But at least the guy made something, right? SpaceX, he's doing something. He's got a product. Is it subsidized? Sure. So are a ton of different industries in this country. But at least he understands how to build something, and there's a voluntary transaction. How many libs were out there throwing their money at Teslas? I see them all the time, by the way. There's actually a guy that lives in my neighborhood that like is one of the Tesla engineers, and I just watched him, and he looks like a regular dude. I wonder how much the culture there has started to shift away from kind of the lib clowns, simply because they're like, hey, now the libs hate us. Now they're like, they're going to get based. They're going to have mustaches and stuff like that. They hate it. And so they're going to have to warn us about the oligarchy, right? The oligarchy used to be known as plutocrats or plutocracy. Plutocracy is like very well-connected, corrupt, wealthy people that can go in and buy access to political favors. My father-in-law loves to call people plutocrats. Elon Musk would be a plutocrat. You know, so would Donald Trump, in theory. Plutocrat, all the plutocrats. But what about, like, Nancy Pelosi, who came out of you know, dad was the mayor of Baltimore and seemed like really mobby in the way that she operates and talks like a mobster. And she's worth $100+ million. There's a lot of plutocrats on both sides. And then you got guys like Bernie Sanders who are consistent. He's crying. He's out doing a Fight the Oligarchy tour at quote unquote town hall. It's like a big rally. I want you to listen to this. Then I'm going to play you the clip, which is absolutely hysterical, of what went public. The reason he's mad is because Elon Musk shared a clip from Maze Moore, who's a fantastic follow over on X, someone I subscribe to as well. Worth, just worth it to keep him making these things. He's like an evil genius archivist. So here's Bernie Sanders crying about a clip that Elon Musk didn't create. He just shared it, God forbid. And then I'll play you the clip as well, because it's freaking fantastic.
You know, it's funny. Just yesterday, our good friend Elon Musk Mr. Musk sent out a tweet. And in essence, he said, you know, Bernie Sanders has been talking about the growth of oligarchy year after year after year. Well, Elon, you're damn right. That's what I've been talking about. The difference is I'm no longer talking about how we're moving to oligarchy. I'm talking about how we are living today in an oligarchic form.
It's like this. The headline should be "Old Man Yells at Clouds." Here's NPR that is also very excited about this. Bernie Sanders warns of quote unquote extraordinary danger facing the United States under Trump at an LA rally. So Los Angeles, which is essentially a captured place, and all the smart people are moving out of there. A place that I used to live, I got to tell you, Los Angeles is absolutely beautiful, even though it is it's a crap culture because it's very vapid. It's so pretty physically. The weather is amazing every day. I could walk to work or ride a motorcycle to work in a t-shirt like almost every single day. When it was cool, all you had to do was put on like a cool jacket. You never needed you didn't need puffy anything there. The food was always really good because you got all these lefties that are creating things. It was such a neat place to live when I was there as a younger person. Like I was there in my early 20s. And I actually hated it too, because there's even neater places in California. Places like Santa Barbara, places like Santa Cruz, right? Places like San Diego. Even San Francisco used to be absolutely a gem, and they've just destroyed these places. So now you got all these dumb clapping seals standing in the background, cheering this old man on, and the clip that he's very, very upset about is Bernie Sanders versus Bernie Sanders times 9. It's literally 9 clips of Bernie Sanders. So I'm going to be basically quiet. I'm going to just tell you the year for our listening audience that's not seeing this. What I have on the screen is a grid. It is a 3x3 grid of 9 Bernie Sanders from 1993 to 2018. It obviously continues now into 2025, but 9x9 is a pretty nice little, or 3x3 is a really nice little grid. 9 examples of Bernie Sanders talking about the oligarchy going back to 1993. Before I was in high school, before Elon Musk was anything, right? Elon's got about 10 years on me, I think, like ish. So he's essentially a child at this point. And now he's part of the oligarchy that Bernie Sanders is scared. Sure, Bernie. Ready? I'll just call it out. First one, 1993.
This great country of ours is moving very rapidly in the direction of oligarchy. The United States of America today is increasingly becoming an oligarchy. More 95. And more moving toward an oligarchy. We are moving in the direction of oligarchy. We will move even more rapidly in the direction of an oligarchy. This great country
2014
is evolving into an oligarchic society. It is called oligarchy, and that is the system we are rapidly moving toward. This is a budget that moves our country rapidly into the direction of oligarchy. A handful of billionaires are moving this entire planet toward an oligarchic society.
Start off with the bad news, which is pretty bad, and that is that under Donald Trump, this country is hurtling rapidly toward oligarchy.
That's freaking hysterical. That's one of the funniest compilations of like long-term retardation that I've ever seen. Just fixated on a word. Man, if you swap that word oligarchy for plutocracy, you would have my father-in-law, who's probably been railing about it since I was a little kid too, probably to my wife when she was a child. I only say that because I've been listening to him do it for a long time, and it sounds the same. My father-in-law is actually easier to listen to than Bernie. Whenever I hear Bernie, I have to do Bernie voice because it's just like, there's a lot of movement in the jowls, and there's a lot of space in the extra skin, and there has been for like basically all of my life, because Bernie Sanders is 1,000 years old. He doesn't always lie, by the way, folks. He doesn't always say things that are false. He actually has some pretty interesting points when it comes to talking about American workers, because he used to have, like, I don't know, somewhat of a principled sort of foundation before the Russia, before everyone needs to go out there and do the impeachment. You know, Bernie Sanders used to try to at least mouth platitudes that was in effect talking about American workers. He's not dumb, by the way. You don't become a millionaire and a politician by being completely foolish. He's found a market for his BS, and the market is like people who are kind of, I guess, jealous of other people's success. That's the only thing I can really line it on. Here he is talking about immigration, 2015. So while he was worried about the oligarchy, because he's been worried about the oligarchy for 30 years, he's talking about something that's actually kind of true, which is that, you know, major corporations love kind of sliding things for a better deal. Short-term wins, long-term losses. Immigration is one of those things for us. Here he is talking about this.
There is a reason why Wall Street and all of corporate America likes immigration reform. And it is not, in my view, that they are staying up nights worrying about undocumented workers in this country. What I think they are interested in is seeing a process by which we can bring low-wage labor of all levels into this country to depress wages in America. And I strongly disagree with that. I mentioned to you a moment ago that unemployment rates for kids in this country, high school kids, white 33%, Hispanic 36%, African American 51%. I frankly do not believe that we should be bringing in significant numbers of unskilled workers to compete with those kids. That's my view. I want to see these kids get jobs. When you have 36% of Hispanic kids in this country who can't find jobs, and you bring a lot of unskilled workers into this country, what do you think happens to that 36% of kids who are today unemployed? 51% of African American kids.
He's not wrong, by the way, folks. Like, this is not the wrong take. If you bring in a bunch of unskilled, illegal, alien people, if you bring in a bunch of people that are coming here on migrant workers, what do? It's very, very, very simple. They take away the opportunities for kids, young people who don't have a lot of financial responsibilities, that are not parents yet, generally speaking, that don't maybe have like a lot of debt, that are maybe living in their parents' household. It takes away their ability to go out there and get foundational skills. Think about your first job. Were you paid very well? The odds are no, you probably were not. But what did you have to live on? Were you living in your parents' house? Many of you, the answer is yes. I think I was 15 from my first job. I worked at Baskin Robbins. I got paid $3 and change an hour. It was garbage. I spent all weekend working, and I could afford nothing when I was done with it. But what did I learn? I learned customer service skills. I learned how to speak to human beings. I learned how to interact with parents and know what our customer base was. I learned how to count money and count out change. I learned what the value of a dollar was. I learned how much it took me to earn a small wage. Didn't have to live on it. How about every single hotel that you go to is now basically cleaned, and all of the work that is done, like the low-level housekeeping stuff, it's all being done by illegals, right? We all know this instinctively. You have to learn Spanish if you want to say thank you to the person that's fluffing the towels and replacing the sheets in your hotel. That should be a high school kid. If it's a high school kid, they can make money. They can sock it away. They can do things with it. They have some skills. They've got a resume when they go out to the next job. So that when I go out there and I applied to a job, let's say like where I was making $25 an hour, and yes, I was making $25 an hour as a college kid, which was that was a ton of money. That was stupid money for me. It was in sales. Do you know why I knew how to sell? Because I was used to the same people that came in and bought ice cream from me and spent $4 or $5 on an ice cream sundae, for their kids after a big football game on Friday nights. I also knew that those people, when they were going to send their kid off to college, I knew that customer. I already knew what they were about. So I knew all the pivot points, and I knew all of the things that were important to them. And I knew how to just have a conversation and not be a weirdo, which is a really big deal in sales. You guys ever talk to somebody that's completely weird and you're like, I don't want to sell to this. I don't want to buy with this person. They're uncomfortable and awkward. You want to buy from a friend, someone who understands what you're about. Easy conversation. Here's what the vacs are. Here's what you got. Come and choose it. I've got all these options. If you don't, no big deal. We'll see you next time. I used to make $25 an hour selling computers at Gateway, and I made decent money after that working for a Circuit City, which also went out. 2 companies that went out of business. I don't think I was the common denominator, but it's possible. I'm just saying. If you don't learn those base level skills, which is what Bernie Sanders is actually accurately talking about, you're screwed. Your kids don't have an opportunity to go out there and compete in the marketplace because they don't have any base experience. And they've never had the opportunity to show up on time and have a boss tell them, this is what I expect you to do. And by the way, it's demeaning, and go clean the toilets. And you're like, okay, that's what my job is. And then you're like, man, I want a job that doesn't clean toilets. That's what I want. I'm going to learn some skills. I'm going to put in hard work so that I don't have to do that job anymore when I'm younger. All my friends started in garbage jobs. One of my buddies worked at a McDonald's and people made fun of him. And I was like, dude, he's working the great American job. He's flipping freaking burgers at McDonald's, running the fry at McDonald's. How many people started there? I know people that own McDonald's, like franchise locations. They started working in them. Just saying, do you need a hand up? Yeah, but should you learn the business? I knew people that were working at Southwestern Bell Global before it became whatever the heck it's called today. It was SBC for a while, whatever, right? It was one of the Ma Bell breakoffs. The guy's like, yeah, I started as an operator, pushing buttons and pushing cables into open holes. And I learned what our business did. And I learned who our customer was. And eventually he was like a marketing guy. And then he eventually moved into the engineering department. And he was like a finance guy. Had no particular set of skills other than he knew the damn business inside and out because he'd been in every position. And he was indispensable to them. We're hiring people into these jobs, and we are stealing opportunities from folks. And then Bernie Sanders, while he's saying this, at the same time, he's also voting for like minimum wage hikes, right? So it's illogical. It's completely illogical to hold his place. He's not a good system to be able to look at, but he's not saying false things all the time. You have to mix a little bit of truth in with your lie if you want people to come along with it. And obviously that's what's going on there as well. Just saying. All right. I don't have any particular videos of bimbos in space, but I do have this story, so we'll put it up there because it's funny. And that is, is that not the most phallic rocket you've ever seen in your life? It has a bulbous head and then a narrow shaft with the words Blue Origin on it. And there's our fancy crew, including Katy Perry and Jeff Bezos' fiance, the chick with the boob job that was like sitting there with the open breasts that Mark Zuckerberg was checking out. It's actually really funny. Like I don't know how else to call it. There's a scaffold tower and a penis-shaped object that's going to blast into space with a bunch of male engineers and a bunch of ladies, including, I should read the story. Let me just read you. 6 women, including Katy Perry, who's a pop star, are going to make an 11-minute space flight on Monday. That's today. The rocket liftoff will mark the first all-female space flight since 1963, which was in the Soviet Union, and it's completely irrelevant because they're not doing any of the work that gets them there. Katy Perry said she's dreamt of going into space for 15 years, and tomorrow that's going to become a reality. Yeah. And she did all the hard work to get into space by being a pop star, so she knows a lot about it, obviously. The crew includes Blue Origin owner Jeff Bezos' journalist fiance. Is she really a journalist? Lauren Sanchez, who's also a helicopter pilot. And they just throw that in there to show that they're putting someone in there that has like some tangible skills. She's a helicopter pilot, so there's that. Then there's Gayle King, who they refer to as a journalist, but might more accurately be called a propagandist. She's in the back. So they got a couple of black females in there. Got a couple of like Hispanic females. There's an Asian chick. This is a mixed bag of like DEI didn't earn it going to space. It's awesome. It's just great. What a great country we have that we will allow this thing. Filmmaker Carrie Ann Flynn is part of the flight crew. She's representing the white chicks that have artistic, capabilities. Civil rights activist Amanda Nguyen. There's your Asian girl. She's Vietnamese. Perfect. Former NASA rocket scientist, one person who actually had something to do with space travel or with with aerospace at some point. This is Aisha Bowie. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Amanda Nguyen is not just a civil rights activist. She's also a bioastronautics research scientist. Can somebody tell me what the field of bioastronomics is at some point? And then what is the qualification to make you a quote unquote researcher? Is it good enough if you just like hang out on Wikipedia sometimes? Anyway, that's the bimbos in space piece. I don't get it. So I don't want to leave the Bernie Sanders things, but I did want to touch that. The funniest thing is that the leftist media is also covering that Republicans are not going to do what Bernie Sanders is doing. That was the actual the reply, so I skipped that for you, and my apologies. Republicans are set to avoid town halls, also known as Republicans are not doing town halls because Republicans didn't set up town halls during the congressional recess. Just wanted you to know that when you do a report of something that's a negative, that would be like me going out there and saying our call-in audience. I was like, our call-in audience is notably not talking about the Ukrainian war right now. Mostly because I didn't bring up the Ukrainian war, right? I didn't talk about it. So I would call you guys out for not bringing up the thing that I wanted you to bring up. You're not doing the thing that nobody was talking about. They're not doing town halls. So you guys should know that. Bernie Sanders is leading the way with town halls while Republicans don't. I don't know. I find that stuff funny. Should we do a couple other like rando things? This came out over the weekend. Then I've got a palate cleanse for you. Tom Fenton has been on the right side of things. I mentioned that earlier. I did want to show you the 2 clips of them. They're relatively short, but he's talking about the same thing that we spent the week covering last week. And I do think they're relevant. Last week, we kept punching in on this guy, Stephen J6 Jensen, the dude who was the DTOS section chief that ran the J6 prosecutions. And I'm not the only voice, thank God, who's calling this out. Actually, Rudy Giuliani did. I'll play that tomorrow. There was an interview where he came out and he's like, I got some real questions. I got some concerns. I don't know Rudy or Mayor Giuliani. I don't know him at all, but I had people tell me like, hey, he's on your side on this. It's like, cool, like, that's nice. Like, it is a problem. I hope it gets to the ear of the president. Tom Fenton at Judicial Watch is also talking about it. J6 Jensen, this is kind of a two-part little piece, two different little videos that were dropped over the weekend from Tom Fenton. He just seems to be sitting in his office and reflecting on this. It's problematic for bigger reasons than just like the guy. It shows a mistake, and we need it corrected. So I'm not going to let the story drop. Like I said, I'm not going to do the same show every single day, but we will play this. Here you go.
My view is the FBI should be treated like USAID, meaning essentially turned into a much smaller agency, if one that exists at all, because they can't be trusted. I mean, it's clear they can't be trusted. And just having folks come in and shuffle people around and change priorities is a temporary measure because the left doesn't care. They will come in and take whatever's available and misuse it again. And you just have to take their weapons away from them. And the FBI has been a reliable weapon for this deep state and the Democratic Party and the radical leftists that too often want to abuse the powers entrusted to them by the American people.
I'll put it out over on X, and I'll put it over on True Social as well for you guys. We'll post it on Locals. But there was a little clip that Jeremy Ryan Slate, who I've interviewed here and I've been on his program a number of times, when he cut it out from the interview we did. And I said, it's very, very simple. The DOJ for a very long time has been the attack dog of the federal government, and that is almost always run by people that are part of the deep state part. There is a deep state animal. And the deep state favors the left because the left favors bigger government. This is like really straightforward stuff. These are people with co-aligned interests. Deep state / admin state doesn't mean that they're like some sneaky people in dark alleys that are talking and setting up these like obscure X-Files style plans. No. These are people that are interested in their own job continuing, and they don't care about the accountability of it. They have institutional loyalty, but not constitutional loyalty. This is ongoing. So I mentioned that the same exact thing that Tom Fenton said. I said this weeks ago, but I've been saying this for about 2 or 3 years now at this point. The DOJ is the attack dog, and the fangs in the mouth of that attack dog are the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, even the United States Marshal Service, whether you like it or not. It may be the least guilty of all of them, but it still does dumb things, and it goes after people. Those 4 entities are the canine teeth in the pit bull that is the attack dog, aka the DOJ. It's not really negotiable. Anybody who understands how these things work knows this. Can you use them for good? Sure. Should you leash them so aggressively that when the power swings back, leftists are very, very good at utilizing government because the government wants to work for them just by default. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of people saying, oh, well, let's just wait and see. No. You tell me. Kash Patel was at UFC this weekend. And for every person out there that's been like, oh, he needs to have a day off, like it's hard work. Do you know when I got a day off? When I did a hostile takeover, I worked for a restaurant business where we took over a restaurant that was stealing and lying, and they were engaged in organized crime locally. Okay? I didn't have a day off for 180 days straight. I worked 12 to 18-hour days every flippin' day. I fell asleep working and I woke up and got to work every damn day. The only time that I had that was peaceful was commute. I ate in the car and I never stopped working because we needed to turn the thing around. That's what should be going on at DOJ right now. And that's what I hoped we were going to be hearing. That's what I heard Kash Patel say he was going to do. Day one, ask these people. Do I need a museum? No. Do I want to see tickets to a deep state museum? I'm not going. We need to be serious about the problem. You don't get any days off when the enemy has been working for decades to undermine you. You cannot take that time. I didn't take a single day off for like 2 years in doing interviews nonstop when they kicked me out of the bureau, because the answer needed to be that we had consistent movement forward to get the messaging out there. There is no time for a day off in your first 30 days. Give me a flippin' break, man. I thought you knew what you were coming into. This is why I feel betrayed on this stuff. And I do feel, that's the word, betrayed. Tom Fenton gets it too. Here's another video of him saying similar things.
There's been some controversy because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, well, I don't know what they did, but anyway, it was reported in the New York Times that a former FBI official who was associated with targeting Americans over January 6th and parents for daring to question boards of education about the safety and security and education of their children, that person who wanted to jail, by some accounts, virtually everyone who opposed or raised questions about the 2020 election, was given a key role in the FBI at the Washington Field Office, which is a major office here in Washington, D.C. for the FBI. So folks are unhappy with Cash putting that person there. I asked questions about it online as well, and I really don't know why he's there. I don't know why he's there.
Answer. There's no good answer. You don't need to promote someone like that. There's no upside. And by the way, if I hear another person say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, that cannot give me an example of keeping your friends close and your enemies closer in Donald Trump's administration. Here's the funny thing. When you keep your enemies closer than your friends, do you know what the enemy can do? See what you're doing, make plans to counter it, screw you over and stab you in the back because you kept your freaking enemies closer than your friends. This is the opposite of what needs to happen. You need to keep your friends in the circle that has a circular, out-facing, every single firing position covered. You need to have overlapping fields of fire and coverage so that when these enemies, which are numerous and significant, when those people come to make a move on you, they get destroyed in overlapping fields of like crew-fed weapons. Period. The friends close, enemies closer, give him a break, take a day off, he's doing hard work, I trust this. F that. Dan Bongino said it over and over again. The do matters, as one of you reminded me in an email this weekend. The do matters. So do it. We gave them a plan, by the way, folks, to offshore these assholes, get them out of the Bureau, put them in places where they could not touch the mission of the FBI, and start restoring order and trust. And they're not doing it. And that is not acceptable. Because it was war gamed out by a dozen former FBI guys, both retired and permanently suspended. We knew what the animal was. We knew how hard it would fight back. And they're getting rolled. So it's nice to see Tom Fitton out there saying the same thing. It should be treated like a hostile creature until otherwise proven. And it is not proven that. All right. That's what I've got for you today. I understand. You know what? Let me also just plug my friends over at Shield Arms. It's kind of neat. I have this thing. I just ordered this over the weekend. If you guys have never been to the Shield Arms website, they make really great magazines for your small Glocks. That's kind of what their bread and butter is. But they're also the only American manufacturer or the only American company selling this ammunition loader, which is absolutely the most badass thing that I saw at SHOT Show because I hate loading mags after I went out there the other day and it took me forever to put 400 rounds through my gun. This thing is the fastest way. It is an ammunition loader that actually works. And then they also have fantastic soft goods. If you go to shieldarms.com, you'll go there and you'll check it out. You're seeing some B-roll footage I shot while I was at the Shield Arms bench. They make really good soft goods. That's going to be like your plate carriers, your rigs, your pouches, your slings, all of those things. You can save money by using promo code Kyle. It's all capitals, K-Y-L-E in all caps. The discount varies, depends on what you're buying, and you may not be able to get them on firearms anymore because they may have like cut the prices to be able to compete. So just be aware. But if you want to use it, again, shieldarms.com and then use promo code KYLE like you would anywhere else. There's some of their products. They're really, really good. Actually, on the screen right here is Wes, who's their product specialist. And that's my gun dealer from my local store out here in Liberty Hills. That's Mike. Mike is a super cool dude, and he's a prior Army dude, and they have a whole soft goods space that they might be stocking this, so you can probably get Shield Arms locally. If your local gun store is not stocking stuff from Shield, ask them. Because they're great products and you guys are going to be happy when you have them. I have like a bunch of their stuff right now and I'm pretty pleased with it. Anyway, so that's some fun stuff. Those are just friends of mine on the screen out there if you guys want to check in. Okay, that's the last little piece here. Just remember to support our program. We really appreciate when you guys do. It's KyleSeraphin.com. It is rumble.com/KyleSeraphin. It's YouTube at Kyle Seraphin. We just broke 9,000 subscribers over on YouTube. That's actually like a big deal for us, even though it's not very many, because we've never been able to get traction over on YouTube and we're finally getting it there. So for those of you that are watching, very much appreciate you sharing it. All of you on Rumble, same story. We're working uphill against like some censorship and some quashing. Turns out if you're aggressive against Dan Bongino and say that he's not doing things, they may or may not have turned off the spigot. And then lastly, if you want to give me the best data and the analytics, and it's very easy to do, KyleSeraphinShow.com. That's where you go and share it with a friend. Send that to somebody in a text message. Say, hey, did you hear this take about the bimbos in space? Which is, by the way, that's your guys' term, not mine, but I'll stand by that. That sounds about right. It looks kind of bimbo-ish. We really appreciate all of you guys doing it. It's just a one-man operation over here, and I did promise you a palate cleanse, so I've got something. Here's Donald Trump fielding some questions about illegal aliens. Obviously, this is not real Donald Trump, but he does a pretty good impression of it. This is, what are black jobs? You guys remember when there was a big controversy about that? This is impeachment worthy, I'm sure.
Trump, I got a question. You on your debate the other day, you said illegal immigrants are taking black jobs. What the fuck are black jobs?
The illegal immigrants are being extremely loud on buses. They are all types of stuff that we said this used to be blacks. Remember when this was black, so we liked it when they were black because they could dance and they were fun. And now the people that are Mexican are not fun.
The black jobs are being loud on buses. That's Shane Gillis. If you guys want to check him out, agreed by people on the right and on the left that he's a really funny dude. So anyway, there's a fun little moment, and I'll give credit where it's due. Thanks, you all, for joining us. Look forward to seeing you this week. I'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting one. God bless you. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.